First off, the new album, Shock. Much has been made. Oh yeah, gotta hold it up. Much has been made about the fact that Phil Collen of Def Leppard produced this album. And you can obviously hear elements of that throughout. What I'm really curious about, though, is how did his input affect you as a drummer? Or influence you and the drumming you did on the album?
Well, just for a little history for Phil Collen, who the viewers that don't know who we're talking about, we're not talking about Phil Collins, we're talking about Phil Collen, the guitar player for Def Leppard.
Yes.
So I want to make that really clear. So, and if you know anything about Def Leppard, in the music world, there's a producer by the name of Mutt Lange who produces their records, and he's this phenomenal genius guy that has a certain way of making records. So once Phil came in to produce the Shock record, we had a conference call, and it was decided that he was going to produce the record, and we were excited about that. And we were going to really be a hands-off band. Okay. Let him make the record he wanted to make. So as pre-production got started and the songs started to come together, I was in the room, we had a few things we would kind of work on, and and through that process, I kind of got lost in that process. They were writing, and they were, having some drum machines and demoing. Now, to answer the question about the drumming factor, because on the Def Leppard records, there's no drums, as far as the drummer goes. They're programmed from Pyromania on, and I didn't know if I was, really, quite honestly, I didn't know how much I would be playing or programming.
Oh.
Or I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know if, what that was going to be. If you want to, who knows, maybe you want to program this or do this and that. We can talk about that as well. And there is a couple things on the record like that we'll talk about with the song Shock, which is all drum machine.
Okay.
Yeah. I ordered up some cymbals and such, but so the process, I wanted to not have any preconceived ideas of what it was I was going to do. So when we decided we were going to go and do the drums, it was just, they had basically some rough melodies and scratched out vocals and drum machine parts, and so I would get with him. I hadn't listened to the tracks, I didn't practice the songs, I didn't learn anything. I said, what are we going to do? Because we were going in the following day to record. Give me the 3 songs we're doing tomorrow, because we were doing 3 at a time.
Okay.
Which I thought, okay, that's cool. That'll give me some time to kind of get in the track and work it and kind of. So I got up that morning, I'd spend an hour, I'd do a quick cheat sheet on the tracks, and we would sit down, we'd discuss. First thing he told me, he says, I want to be able to air drum the record. So in other words, nothing fancy, don't give me these freaking paradiddles and all this cool jazz stuff you play, right? I think you want to play or whatever it might be, but. So I got that message, I understood what that meant, and I just kind of sat down, listened to the track, and we discussed, and we kind of went through, and we just kind of plowed through the stuff, and 3.5 days later we had the drums done. And I hadn't played any of the tracks until I had actually recorded them.
Okay. And
first time, because I didn't want those preconceived ideas about what I was going to do or thought I should do, or
all right.
I wanted to work with him.
So. And then what kinds of guidance did he give you?
He gave me great guidance. He was amazing. Hey, Troy, when we come up to this section, give me a blah, blah, blue, blue, blah. That's drum talk, right? We know what drum talk is. Blah, blah, blue, blue, blah. I know what that is.
Right.
So we gave him some blah, blah, blue, blue, blah. And then, hey, when this other feels, boom.
Right.
He might have some ideas, and maybe I would embellish on those thoughts. And I was all ears, man. I was like, whatever you want, man. Just steer the ship, man. Which way do you want to take this thing?
Yeah.
This was truly a wonderful experience.
Yeah. But it still sounds like you.
And well, it is.
I think that's the interesting thing is you can have this influence and you can have someone steering you in a direction, but there's a musical DNA, I think, to every musician, and you can't help but sound like you in a way,
Yeah, and I wanted to, I knew what, because I know who that guy is, and I could take his interpretation. It doesn't mean I'm going to play exactly blah, 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 blah. Sometimes I did.
Yeah.
But, he also was really great in the sense that if there was something that we captured, and I was just going through the tune, because I would just do a take through the song,
Okay.
and then go back and maybe we'd section out some feels, you know, like,
Mhm.
oh, let's check that one there, or hey, what about this, you know?
Yeah.
So we captured a lot of me playing,
Yeah.
which was cool, and he was very open to those ideas when they would come up, you know.
Mm-hmm. And well, then that begs the question: when you guys play these songs live, is it pretty much the same your part, or do you expand what you do live?
Well, let's take a song like Shock, which has all drum machine.
Okay.
That's live, there's no drum machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's me playing, and I put my own parts, and I thought, well, that second verse, you know, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's the same loop, and then they hit the bridge, and it's that same thing. And I thought, so I took those sections for me, and everything is my translation of what it is I would do with that information, and put it where I think it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's worked. And the funny thing was, I didn't know when we started going into rehearsals that it could have been, hey, you know, no, we want that, you know, but actually it was quite the opposite. Jeff right away said, look, we've always been a band of no machines, you know, and we were open enough to go ahead and, you know, I mean, there's shakers and some overdub percussion and things
Yeah.
that we don't normally have too much on a Tesla record, a couple loops and, you know, so normally if there's a loop, I'm going to play it. I'm going to come up with a part and play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And you talk about like the air drum aspects to it. You know, one of the things that really stood out for me was the opening. You do this opening toms rumble at the beginning of "Love Is a Fire," where you know it's this ballad. But I thought it was interesting because the first thing that grabs you is you know smacking away on the toms to like grab people's attention. Is that one where he had an idea for it, or
There was a programmed machine drum part that what I try to do, because I knew they were, you know, it's funny, man. You start working these songs, and as they're developing, sometimes you get married to the drum machine or the part, and I was like, well, let me make sure I know what the parts are. So I would always be respectful, have the information. And then if I felt and I could embellish upon that and kind of pull it into my world a little bit, make it a little hipper or cooler, you know, and if you're not in that ballpark and you go too far and pull it back, you know. But that was, I don't normally, you know, like I remember I had to put the 10-inch tom up there.
No, okay.
You know. To give it just that extra, if you got 13, 16, 18, you know, you're kind of limited color-wise.
Yeah.
And, you know, you bring that 10 in there, it really changes things. You know, so, but actually, I just had to think about, I was confusing the song you were talking about with another song.
Okay.
Let me get honest here, now that I really know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That was pretty much verbatim what he wanted me to play.
Okay.
Blue, 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 blue,
Yeah.
blue, blue, blue. Yeah, right. I was going to another track.
Okay.
Oh well.
Yeah.
But it was the same concept.
Yeah. But and then also, you know, to me, I feel like I can hear your influences. Because, like for instance, you've mentioned Steve Gadd. Actually, I think his title is now Dr. Steve Gadd. Has been a big influence.
He's
of yours.
absolutely, by far, I will say it on the camera, he is my favorite. If I had to pick one guy, it's you, Mr. Gadd. Absolutely. I love Steve Gadd, and I'm a huge Bonham fan too, as you know.
Right. But you know what always stands out in my mind is Steve Gadd. You know, can take this simple part, but just invest it with a lot of feeling. And I felt like I heard that when you listen to the first single, Tastes Like, and there's that part in the middle where everything kind of breaks down and goes away. And for a while, it's mainly you just kind of doing a 4/4 pattern on that one, with a little bit of guitar. You know, everything kind of, you know, and it's
Yeah,
just
I like. Yeah, that section opens up nice.
yeah, but you know you do a little bit of, you know, like accenting with the hi-hat and stuff, and so it's not mechanical. It's, there's a feeling, there's a soul to it. What's the key to investing or embedding, some life into even a basic beat?
Well, electronic percussion.
Electronic percussion.
There is actually the and, which is if I'm playing straight,
Yeah.
and then you have this one, and you can feel that little thing happening percussively, and it kind of just gives it a little bit of a swing.
Yeah.
I wish I could take full credit for that. And I did. I was thinking like, okay. So, thinking about what you said, I was like, all right, I hate to break it to you, but that's what's really cool. But I mean, I get a chance to have all of those moments and have those ghosting and those things that are inside of me, and those dynamics, by the way you play something, or with a hi-hat, and add to. So, I mean, you're not completely wrong.
Right, yeah.
So.
Okay. And then the last time we did an interview a year ago, you were talking about how you were recommitting yourself to studying the drums, and you were going back to, the Ted Reed book and rudiments and really, hardcore fundamentals. I'm curious, now that we're a year on from that, how has that influenced your, let's say, studio work?
I think those things kind of it's a matter of being in shape and having those tools in your toolbox. If it's grace notes, it's shuffles, it's paradiddles, those things have a way of surfacing naturally and organically. That's where I like to see it happen for me. I never think, and I never ever approach music from a studied side of it, if that makes sense, a clinical side. I want it to stay as much organic. But having those tools help me very much so in the studio. Even coming back, so I don't always play the center of the drum. So my sticks are long. I'm playing a little bit up top, but I noticed the other night I'll pull back and then I'll pull into the center, and it can be controlled.
Yeah.
My sticks are so long that, but I've got it, but it's consistent. It's right there, and if I'm going to move that up or not, and pretty consistent around the drums, and learning how to still hit the drums, and I'm practicing. I don't take any of it for granted. It's a very physical thing for me to play this show. And because of my set is so largely spread out, and I'm overextending to a point of ouch,
Oh.
But I'm going to have to probably reel it in a little next year. I'm going to go home and get an MRI. I mean, it is what it is,
Okay.
So there are factors that you got to, I'm juicing, I'm eating, all these things make a difference.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do really clean living,
Right.
and so I can have all of that stuff support exactly what your question is, and have it's all combined. It's everything that I'm doing. I have to reinvent myself on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Kinda, if that
Okay.
makes sense,
But yeah, and it also sounds like it says you do the practice, you do the work off stage, and get it baked into the subconscious, so that it somehow comes out, but it's not like, as you said, clinical or mathematical, where you're saying, well, I'm going to play this exact note here or this exact note. You go with, all right, this is what it feels like at the time.
It's always about feel for me.
Yeah.
But I have to have the tools. I have to be able to shuffle. I have to be able to swing. I have to be able to play some Latin stuff. I have to understand Bayonne and certain rhythm patterns and, Luccketta, and just simple, basic. I don't have to be experts in these fields. I just have to have the basics to where if somebody says, hey man, let's pull this thing into a little bit of a reggae thing, and I'd be, ragu?
Right.
You know what I mean? I can relate to that a lot more.
Yeah.
But I know the kick drum's going to fall on the 3, and if I can make it feel good and put my thing in there well enough and nobody's putting any focus or looking at me like, if it feels good, it feels good. And that's usually what people are going for. If we have to get a little deeper than that, I can, but.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks to the fact that you're always open to trying new things and changing.
Always.
And because that was another thing we talked about last year. It was I'm blanking on his name. Sean, the drummer for Florida Georgia
Fuller.
Line.
Sean Fuller.
Sean Fuller. You said he kind of surprised you by reconfiguring your kit one day, and then
The kid I'm touring with.
yeah, and
His,
you
his
sit down.
setup, yeah. He came over, and it was really cool. That day he came over, I just happened to get these old Gretches back. A buddy of mine had sent me, and we were pulling them out of the box and stuff. And I already had gotten off the REO Speedwagon Def Leppard Tesla tour. We had just spent a year on, and John Aldridge had said he wanted to build my new kit, and I had my drums sitting out in the back room and the hardware, and I had this equation, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and we had gotten back there to the back room, and I had showed Sean the drums. I said, man, John Aldridge is going to be here in the next 3 weeks. I go, I have no clue what I'm going to do with my setup. Mm-hmm. And he goes, aren't you tired of one tom up front? And I go, and I didn't think much. I went in to make us a sandwich. I go, yeah, whatever. And so I knew he was going to kind of start laying some things out.
Yeah.
I went in the house and I came back out, and he had my setup pretty much configured, and which, we got a 8, 10, 13, 16, 18. I got a 12 over here, which was, I like, okay, I played it. It felt great, and I just left him set up. John showed up, and I said, there you go, man. Build it around that.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, no, but I mean, I think it's because some people, there are musicians in this world that are very much, for lack of a better term, control freaks about everything. And I think it's interesting that you're very open to, okay, this wasn't part of the plan, but maybe, this is...
Well, speaking of, the funny thing was, so John is building the kit. If you've seen my kit, there's like a small rack that comes around this side and a small rack on this side. And because this side is kind of out this way, and he had this side because of the floor toms. And you looked at it and you're like, well, if you're going to do that, you gotta make it symmetrical, right?
Yeah. So
I reach over and I pull it out there, and now it's like way out there. He goes, how are you going to play it? I said, that's my problem. But yeah, I'm very adaptable. I've had some not so user-friendly drum kits over the years in terms of sitting and playing them. Mm-hmm. When I think back about it, this next year I'm going to keep things a little more user-friendly, and it's not that big of a deal. Things are spread out.
Yeah.
But like if I jump on Zuckerman's kit, his kit is
drummer for sticks. Just
Todd,
FYI.
excuse me. I love you, and you know how much I love you and have respect for you. You're the ultimate. Anyway, we won't go there.
Right.
Anyway, so point being, when you sit on Todd's kit, it's really well laid out. Much more convenient and accessible than my drum kit.
Mm-hmm. Ergonomically.
But I watched Todd get on my kit, and he played it fine, man. He's just like, but I have things set up and purposely pushed out and spread out, so I have to physically work at it and turn it into a little bit more of a,
show.
Yeah, just to get it up. My sound man, the cymbals were lower, and because of the drums and the bleed, and he's like, get those cymbals up, and I'm like, so now they're up, and now I'm like, hey, I said next year they're coming back down,
Right, but no, and I can see how it works live for more of a show, as far as that goes.
It's good. It's a good thing, and I'll do something, I'll push myself. Hopefully, physically, I can get home and get through whatever's going on and make some changes.
Yeah, and speaking of live playing, particularly with Tesla's live shows, there are some rather intense guitar solos that go on. And I'm curious, what's the key to meshing well as a drummer with a guitar solo? Because it's, you don't overpower the guitars, but it's not like you've just become a metronome. There's a feel that I think you bring to each solo, and I'm curious.
We've been playing 30-something years together. Mm-hmm. So over time, I know Frank and what's pretty much mostly going to happen most of the time, and he knows me, and we know each other, and I know when Frank's on top, of the track, and I know when I'm on top of the track. I mean, we all can sense that within, and ultimately, the goal is to obviously just be support of whatever, but still have a little bit of freedom to take some chances. Like the other night, I don't do a solo on the tour, and the other night I did a small little solo. Because we were in New York, and he's like, I'm playing, and it was a short one, but I committed, He's like, come on, I'm like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And that's when I talked to my tech, he goes, you committed, and I said, well,
Yeah.
I don't know what Don Famularo was in the audience.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it wasn't planned, but I'm just, it's around a basic, just 4/4 thing, and you just play some fills and.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those things that I don't think gets talked about. I think there's an art form to not only just playing for the song, but being able to support another musician's solo in a way that's, you're still driving, you still have good feel, but you're not, you're giving them the room to take the spotlight.
He has the room, and Frank's taken more liberties than any of us. And I highly encourage that. I'm okay with that. Sometimes it gets a little far out. Mm-hmm. I might want to say, hey Frank, just a little bit. I would never want to discourage that. Even though if I go there, it's going to be a problem, and I get that. And I've had, don't throw that jazz shit at me. It's not jazz.
Right.
But okay. Anyway, I think, we're out with Leppard. I mean, we've done, 250, 300 shows, I think, with those guys.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years of off and on touring.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're a machine, man. That thing is solid. And there's something to be said for owning and locking and committing every night to that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so easy to maybe get bored, but there's a way to play Love Song 30-something years later, and I'm committed every night, and the band is committed. And you watch the crowd, and you see what's happening. Mm-hmm. And, it's still, man, it could still feel like the first time. I mean, it's amazing how that works. And I mean, all these years later, I think maybe because I get to play so much music and I get to play with so many wonderful different people, mm-hmm. It's easier for me. Mm-hmm. I think at times, and I sit and I practice, and right over here I got my little practice kit, and I'm not playing Love Song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So. I mean, I don't know. I love what we do as a band. I love what we have as a band, and we're all, still enjoying it and committing. And some nights are better than others, but there is I'm playing. There are songs that the fills are changing every night. Lazy mm-hmm. Days and Crazy Nights. It's like, well, they just started putting it back in the set, and there's all these little setup sections mm-hmm. that set up the chorus and different coming back in the verse, and they're probably different every night, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I don't go too far with it,
Yeah, well,
and it's always about the music. So it's how I'm feeling at that moment, whatever's happening. I'm committed.
Yeah. And, kind of along those same lines, another great drummer you introduced me to, Michael McDermott, and he talked about drummer for Joan Jett.
Fabulous drummer.
Go watch his interview if you haven't.
The amazing Michael McDermott. Check him out.
And he and I talked about consistency, and so like you talk about the.
I watched that interview, by the way. Awesome interview, Michael, and fantastic. I really loved the way you handled the questions to him and how that went down. And I learned so much watching him every night about being that guy and committed and consistency. I never try to be lazy, mm-hmm. And so the physical part of what I'm doing now, just to be connected to the drum kit, it's weird. The way my drums are set up, it's like if I don't play them, they're going to play me. Mm-hmm. And really, I mean that. It's interesting, how that works, just being and owning it and feeling it and being a part of that thing that happens, And I'd watch him all the time, and I just loved the way he played. And and consistency. You guys were talking about the
Yes.
consistency, you know, and just the hits, you know, and it's different because I was thinking about that as well, you know, because I got my snare, I
Right.
got my hit, and I know where my stick's falling,
Yeah.
you know, and I had to make a conscious decision based on the way my kit was set up to hit dead center of the drum, which I'm just a little up top. I'm not dead center, but you ain't gonna know it when you hear it out front,
Yeah.
you know, and I can hit dead center and I could pull back, you know. But it's weird. And Dom Famularo mentioned it the other night. He goes, I notice your shoulder, you know, I'm here. I'm not,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right,
I'm,
right.
I'm kind of like this the way I play,
Yeah.
you know, but, you know, I've had to readjust and recommit myself, you know, somewhat on a daily basis at times and just check myself. You know, if I'm not hitting, the first guy that always busts my britches is Brian, our bass player. God bless him. Hit them damn drums, you know. I can't hear your kick drum. I can't hear your snare drum, you know. And I'm like, because he'll know during sound check if I'm not giving it 100%.
No.
And I was like, sound check, you know. So I'll just,
Yeah.
you know. But I like that because it keeps me on my toes. I can't back off. I got to be careful with all the grace notes, the stuff that nobody's going to hear, you know, and find ways to take that. And actually, it's not necessarily true. Some of that stuff comes across real well. And I love that about Chris and Travis's interview you were talking about.
Oh,
They were
okay.
talking about the dynamics.
Thomas Rhett. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so true, but there's so many factors in, you know, from where I sit to the back of the arena. You know, and things that do get lost translation. But I mean, if you're Steve Gadd, I can assure you that stuff's coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, you go watch, you know, that stuff can. We are a rock band, you know. So my sound man's like, hey, I want, you know, when you get down here, that's getting lost. So if my dynamic range is from here to here,
Yeah.
I have to take this dynamic range and put it into here,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I have to kind of set my threshold a little higher, you know, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely.
And it makes sense, you know, and I've learned that. And I've learned as much from everybody out here suggesting and, you know, whatever is coming at me. I'm like, I'm constantly still learning, you know, it's awesome.
Yeah. You were a perpetual student.
Always, absolutely.
And then finally, I was just curious, do you have a favorite track on the new album? And if you do, what makes it your favorite?
Wow. Let me see here.
I mean, that's, yeah, all right.
I don't know that I have a favorite track on the record.
Okay. If you don't, that's fine.
I probably don't. You know, I think what I like about our music, I get to express myself in a lot of different ways musically, and because of all the catalog and the history of the band over the last 30 plus years,
Yeah.
you know, I'm okay. I don't really, you know, when I think of a song, when people say, hey, what's your favorite song, you know, for some reason I always go to What You Give, which is just a beautiful song, and it's not about what you got, it's what you give, and it's just a metaphor for life for me and how I feel about what that is.